There is something that is very near and dear to each and every one of us that has been weaponized and is actively being used against us. And this is something Chase Hughes talked about. If you've never watched any of his videos, I highly encourage you to do so, because he is a very, very brilliant and interesting man. But that thing is language. Language, if you really think about it, has 100% been used against us, and it is currently being used against us right now. If you think about all the stuff that comes out in the mainstream media, the stuff that people buy into, all these agendas and these fake narratives, most of this is being done through language. All these terms that we hurl at each other and we use to insult each other and we use to sow division between us and our fellow man, it all comes down to language. And mainstream media is very privy to this, and they do it very intentionally. If you think about all these terms that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago, that suddenly now exist, and all these terms we do use to insult each other online and in real life, we're constantly throwing these things back and forth. It was done intentionally, and that is to divide us. Language has, and probably always will be, used against us. It is a weapon. And it's not just a weapon from the people at the top and the people that want to control us and the people that want to have dominion over us. It's a weapon that we use against ourselves, because we very much do tell ourselves certain things about ourselves using language. And a lot of that is done through internal dialogue. I find myself doing this all the time. I mean, I can't tell you how many times throughout the day I'll get wrapped up in my thoughts and I'll just start spiraling out of control. And usually when I'm spiraling in my thoughts, it's either something that's very constructive and that's very beneficial, or it's something that's very negative. And if it's something that's very negative, it's usually because I've been scrolling social media or I've seen something that kind of made me angry online, usually, like something popped up in a news feed or something. Because the mainstream media, again, they know this. They put this stuff out to us and they try to get that emotion going. And they know that most people that have internal dialogues, because there are some people that don't, but most people that have internal dialogues, they're going to internalize that stuff. They're going to start to create this narrative in their heads about the things that they're seeing, and that is what people do. That's what I do. But there's a major problem when we do that, because when we do that, we start spiraling out of control in our head. That is a shadow, that's darkness that starts to build up inside of us. And the more that that shadow and that darkness starts to build up, the more that we usually try to suppress that. Because the fact is, in our modern world, we don't really have an outlet like we used to. Most of us have kind of retreated from society. We don't go out much. We don't communicate with that many people because modern society is something we don't align with anymore. So a lot of us, we're starting to break free from that and forge our own path. And because we're doing that, we're disconnecting from the majority of society. And that means that we're not talking to people like we used to, because there are fewer and fewer people that we trust. There are fewer and fewer people that we feel like we can talk to, especially about these things and about these topics. And that's a very bad thing when you don't have an outlet, because the more this stuff builds up and the more that you try to suppress it and push it down, the more risk you run into having that spill out into the world around you and onto the people around you. That is essentially what happens when people fly off the handle over stupid, small, petty stuff, is because they've been internalizing all this dialogue throughout the entire day or throughout the entire week. And there's one small thing that happens and it's enough to push them over the edge. And they have an outburst. And that's what we're seeing in society, because that is becoming very, very common. So what I've grown to realize is that it is very, very important, especially today, to have an outlet. And there are a few different outlets that I have found to be the most beneficial and that I have learned is very good at breaking me out of this cycle. And the first thing that I do when I find myself spiraling into this pit of darkness is I disconnect. Whatever it is that's causing that emotional response in my mind, I disconnect from it. Usually it means disconnecting from social media, disconnecting from the internet. Whatever the trigger is, I remove myself from that trigger and I distance myself from it as much as possible. And once I'm disconnected from that, I ground myself in the present moment. So instead of just floating through life and being in my head all day, I stop and just take the world in. It doesn't matter where I'm at. I could be outside, I could be inside, I could be in a social setting. But the key is that I just ground myself and experience the moment. Feel what is happening around me. Hear what people are saying. Actually take it all in, because how many of us today actually stop and take the time to do that? It's very few. And we don't do it very often when we do. And when we do actually do it, we are usually still in our heads. So it's important to learn how to actually disconnect and disconnect from everything and just be present. Allow the silence to wash over you. Allow your mind to be free. Allow it to just be empty and just take it all in. And I've found that when I do that, I experience the most profound peace that I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I really do believe that that is our natural state. That's the way we were meant to live. And if you think about our history, it's probably how we were living back in the day, because we didn't have all this stuff that was clamoring for our attention back in the day. We didn't have all these distractions. We didn't have all this noise. So I would say most of the time we were probably grounded in the present moment. We weren't telling ourselves all these terrible things about ourselves. We weren't making up these false narratives and projecting that onto ourselves. We simply just were. And I think that's the key here, is just simply being here, simply existing, simply doing what we do and being present. And from there, if that's not enough to get me out of my head, I simply verbalize stuff. And YouTube is a very good outlet for me to do that. I get on YouTube, I start recording videos, and it's a very good way for me to just sit down and let my thoughts pour out. I don't script any of my videos. Sometimes I have notes and stuff that I kind of follow just so I can keep things structured and coherent. But most of the time, I just sit down and speak from the heart. Whatever's on my mind at the time, I let it all go. The people that resonate with it are going to resonate with it. The people that don't, won't. All of that is totally fine because it's an outlet for me. If people can benefit from that, that's an amazing thing. And it doesn't have to be YouTube. It could be anything. If you've got a close friend or a family member or a like-minded person that you can trust, that's a perfect person that you can share your frustrations with, that you can share your thoughts with, and just get stuff out there. And I am very fortunate to have a couple close friends and family members that I feel comfortable enough to share a lot of the things that I think about with. And I do have a tribe and a community of like-minded people around me that think the same way I do, that I can also share things with. But if you don't have that, now might be a good opportunity to go out there and find it. And if you don't want to, there's still other ways that you can get this stuff out there. Another very great outlet for me is writing. I've always been a writer, and I've always loved to write. And actually for me, I think writing is probably one of my number ones, because when I sit down and I just put stuff on paper, for some reason it's a very good outlet to where it just flows straight from my mind onto the paper or onto the screen. I can type exactly what I'm thinking in real time, and I can get everything that is in my mind out into the world. And that is most important, is just getting it out into the world. And the great thing about writing is that once you have it documented, you can refer back to it. And that's why whenever I write and I put stuff on paper, I always like to put down what I'm thinking, why I'm thinking it, and I also like to document solutions on how to combat that, so that if I ever run into that problem again, I can refer back to it. And I know exactly what I was thinking at the time. I know why I was thinking it. I can dissect that, and I can see exactly what I did to solve that problem. And after I've grounded myself in reality, I've verbalized it, and I've written it down, I visualize. And this one right here, this one has literally changed my life, and that's no joke. When I visualize, I try to imagine my future. And not just my future, but I pick a point in the future, say 5-10 years from now. And I imagine what I'm going to be doing, who I'm going to be with, where I'm going to be at. I imagine how I got there. I imagine why I'm there, why what I'm doing is important to me. And I also like to think about what I'm feeling, because when you can embody that feeling and truly feel it, then that is your mind's way of knowing that it's already happened. And that is also confirmation to your mind that what you're experiencing is actually possible. I visualize the most optimal version of myself that is existing in that current moment. And I also realize and understand, and I tell myself that that version of myself already exists. That is me. I just have not caught up to that person yet. So all I have to do is continue to make the choices that I would make in order to put myself into that position. And by doing that, it has allowed me to create basically my dream lifestyle, my dream life. I am living the life that I dreamed up 10 or 20 years ago. And I know that as I continue to do this, it's going to continue to be true in the future. My future self that I am visualizing 5 or 10 years in the future, eventually I will catch up to that person, and I'm going to live that life. So as you can see, all of this uses language. It uses words. It uses that internal dialogue that we all have, but instead of allowing language to be weaponized and used against us, and to tell us things about ourselves that isn't true, it's using it in a very constructive way. And the beautiful thing about flipping the script and using language in this way, instead of using it as a weapon, is that it allows you to get to know yourself on a fundamental level. It fortifies your mind and it makes you unshakable. It makes you stronger. This is how you change your reality and make yourself immune to the external world. This is how you make yourself immune to the language that is being weaponized and used against us. And this is how you change your life.